Interview with Billy from 1998. Question 1. When and under what circumstances did your contacts with the extraterrestrials begin? How long are they supposed to last? Billy. Answer. My contacts with extraterrestrial human entities began in the 1940s when I was still a very young boy. My first contact person was an old man named Svarth, who spoke in the somewhat broad Swiss German Polack dialect of my village. It all began on a beautiful, sunny summer morning when I was standing with my father next to a large walnut tree behind our house. Suddenly an inner urge beckoned me to turn my eyes toward Mount Eschenmoser. As a result, above it in the azure sky, I saw a silvery flash shooting in the direction of the church steeple. After a split second the silver flash shot past us above our heads and disappeared above the forest, approximately 5 kilometers 3 miles from us. I could see that the object was a huge, round, metallic disc. When I asked my father what he thought this thing was, he replied that it was probably Hitler's latest secret weapon. Somehow I couldn't believe him, and from this moment onward I constantly scoured the sky, where I observed at night, moving stars, traveling high in the firmament. They were not airplanes. One day I felt an inner impulse and I heard some sort of voice which, from that point onward, began to speak to me. One day the voice summoned me to walk to Langesingen in the Horrigen forest and told me to wait there for things to happen, namely, a pear-shaped flying object would be visiting me. I did as I was told and went to the designated location. Shortly after my arrival, a silver, pear-shaped flying object descended and landed on the ground before me. A very old man disembarked and addressed me in a friendly tone. He said his name was Svarth and explained he came from an alien planet and had many things to discuss with me, to teach me, and so forth. This was my initial contact with an extraterrestrial human being, and it was followed by many others with Svarth. The contacts ended in 1953, only to be continued until 1964 by a woman called Askit. When Svarth visited me, he came from the Pleiades/Pleiades. Askit came from the Dal universe, a parallel universe to ours, a twin universe. No further contacts took place until they were resumed on January 28, 1975, by a young woman from Error in the Pleiades/Pleiades system, which is not identical to the Pleiades constellation with which we are familiar. The new contact person was Semyaza, and the contacts with her continued into the early 1980s. Additionally, I was also visited by Semyaza's sister, Plea, along with their father, Pathar, and Commander Quetzal. Since that time 2 young women, Talida and Manara, among others, also became my contact partners. Official contacts with me ended in the early morning hours of February 3, 1995. But this didn't mean that the contacts completely ended. Only the official contacts terminated because the Pleiadians/Pleiarans had by this time fulfilled their task on Earth. Private and unofficial interpersonal contacts continue without interruption and will do so until I expire and pass from this life. However, the current contacts won't occur quite as frequently as they did before February 3, 1995, although it is possible for a contact dialogue to still be recorded and the information to be passed on now and then. Question 2. Could you possibly provide me with a broad outline of how many human races inhabit the universe? Billy. Answer. Originally 40,353,607 different pure human races were created by creation, and they began in a natural evolutionary manner upon many planets within many solar systems of many galaxies throughout the entire universe. These human races developed from natural biologic evolutionary processes within the developmental confines of the planets. The evolution was such that first flora came into being by way of certain amino acids and amino acid chemical compounds. Through natural processes of waxing and waning, further natural coincidences occurred, the result of further purposeful encounters of cause and effect. The result was new amino acid compounds from which fauna developed, the animal kingdom. At the time when only flora existed, lichen and similar growths alone existed, but later animals came into existence which not only ate plants but also each other. These animals were subordinated into the waxing and waning process as well, and to this end, they deposited matter and died. This process, in turn, triggered further biologic chemical processes from which, once again, new amino acid compounds and new life forms originated. Ultimately, the human life form developed, consisting of many races, namely 40,353,607, as I previously mentioned, with a total of 343 different skin tones. These human races varied greatly from each other, depending on the living conditions and the atmosphere of their home worlds. And yet, all of them were always indisputable human entities. Some of them were as small as gnomes, but others were dwarfs, colossi, giants, titans to name a few. Among them were also human entities of small stature who remained part of their own race, but due to genetic flaws they never quite reached their full normal height. These diminutive beings were not the same as dwarfs, for they are actually races who, even to this day, continue to exist in the same manner. People of small stature still live, even here on Earth, but, unfortunately, they are being scorned and referred to as Lilliputians, in a way reminiscent of the fiction novel Gulliver's Travels. On Earth as well, people of assorted sizes exist who belong to other races, such as the small-statured pygmies, and those of normal height who make up the majority, as well as terrestrial giants, such as the Watasai and Maasai tribes of Africa. Question 3. Where do the extraterrestrial intelligences come from with whom you maintain your contacts, and why are they, in particular, the ones who are visiting us on Earth? Billy. Answer. The extraterrestrials with whom I maintain contact come from the constellation of the Pleiades/Pleiades. This constellation, however, is not the same Pleiades we observe from Earth in our own space and time configuration. The constellation we see is approximately 420 light-years from Earth and is only about 62 million years old. Furthermore, as hot, blue suns they are absolutely incapable of supporting any form of life, not of purely spiritual nor of a material form. The Pleiades/Pleiades from where these extraterrestrials come, exist in a different space and time configuration that is shifted from our own by a fraction of a second, and could only be penetrated via an artificially created dimension gate in the vicinity of the Pleiades that are visible from Earth. The distance from the gate to the Pleiades, as the extraterrestrials call their native system, is approximately 80 light-years further. The term Pleiades is to them the same as the word Pleiades is to us. A little over 50,30 years ago, when the extraterrestrials discovered and began inhabiting the Pleiades star cluster and its planets, they named them after the Pleiades, which is the same as Pleiades in their own language. They elected to do this since their own Pleiades are in a region just beyond the Pleiades with which we are familiar on Earth. The Pleiadians/Pleiarans are visiting us on Earth because they have a direct association with a particular terrestrial group who originally came to Earth from the Lyra Vega systems, which also are shifted into another space and time configuration from the Lyra Vega constellations we can identify. These original Earth-inhabiting Lyrians Vegans invoked a great deal of havoc among the terrestrial population in those early days, and, because of them, the humans on Earth lost the spiritual teachings and the life in accordance with creation. Other factors came into play in this process but cannot be attributed to the Lyrians Vegans. Instead, they are the result of other extraterrestrials who genetically manipulated human entities. These humans later came to Earth and interbred with other terrestrials to the point where the entire terrestrial human population was ultimately affected by this repeated process of heredity. In order to remedy this damage and misguidance, the Pleiadians/Pleiarans felt an obligation to transmit once again the required teachings and essential information to the terrestrial humans, in an effort to remedy the damage created by their direct ancestors and the damage generated by other intelligences. Question 4. Could you describe to me what takes place during one of your contacts? Has the procedure changed from the early days? Billy answered, during my early contact years I frequently had to drive with my moped for many miles before I would be telepathically led to an extremely remote rendezvous site or to a lonely forest clearing where the contact person normally was already waiting for me in the landed beam ship or preparing for arrival within a few minutes. Sometimes several hours elapsed before an actual contact took place because of people milling around the site or because I was being pursued on this day or that night. Once in a while I was permitted to bring along other people to the rendezvous site, but they always had to wait a distance of at least 500 meters, approx 500 yards from the site. However, they were often able to see the beam ships during their landing approaches or departures, and occasionally they witnessed flight or energy flare demonstrations. Later on, once we had moved to the Semyaza Silver Star Center, I was only rarely called to the forests for a contact. Usually I was simply beamed into a beam ship, which meant that at times I was actually beamed up from the midst of a group of people. Various people can attest to such an event, as well as to the fact that on various occasions some group members observed the beam ships, their flight demonstrations, and even the extraterrestrials themselves. In 1982 I suffered a very severe breakdown that damaged my overall health. My recuperation from this adversity has been only partial, and it has taken a lot out of me. In the years before 1989 I was closer to death than to life, and during this period the Pleiadians/Pleiarans visited me directly by beaming themselves into my office or wherever I stood outdoors. Question 5. How long does it take the Pleiadians/Pleiarans to travel through space from their home worlds to Earth? And how is it possible for them to span the astronomical distance of approximately 500 light-years? Billy answered, during their initial contact period the trip from their deviated space and time configuration in the dimension beyond the Pleiades visible from Earth took about 7 hours. Over time, and with their technology continually advancing, the trip was shortened to 7 minutes. With their latest mode of transportation, using transmitters, they can traverse any designated distance throughout the entire universe instantly, without any loss of time whatsoever. During the early contact years the extraterrestrials still used beam, tachyon, and antimatter propulsion systems, whereby they were able to reach multiples of the hyperspeed of light by using the latter two systems, which enabled them to quickly conquer the immense distances. Though they retained these technologies, they have added their latest mode of propulsion, which utilizes transmitters. The transmitters allow them to program the coordinates of their final destination practically to the meter, thus allowing the travelers to reach their destination without any loss of time. Question 6. Why do the extraterrestrials not land in full view of the public, for instance in front of the United Nations Palace in Geneva or on the White House lawn in Washington? Billy answer. The reasons for this vary, but a significant one is that they are governed by a directive, which states that the Pleiadians/Pleiarans are neither allowed to reveal themselves to terrestrials nor can they interfere in any manner, shape or form with the events of the human population on any planet who is still incapable of considerable space travel. This directive also applies when a people have yet to reach a state of congenial peacefulness, humanness, and cosmic interconnectedness with all life forms in an ethical and humanistic way. Therefore, the Pleiades/Pleiades extraterrestrials are not allowed to openly and freely move about or reveal themselves to terrestrials. Question 7. Why does Billy Edward Albert Meyer of all people have contacts with the Pleiadians/Pleiarans, but no one else does? Billy answer. The reason for this can be found in the past. Thousands of years ago, when my spirit form existed within humans who had voluntarily pledged to fulfill a specific mission. For the spirit form and the comprehensive consciousness, which has the capability to reincarnate, this mission became a long-term task and would extend across many reincarnations and millennia into today. To this end, comprehensive consciousness, which originated in higher planes, adapted itself to the lower forms of consciousness that exist on Earth, while it retained the ability to remain on par with higher forms of consciousness. Therefore, the only reason why I am able to have contacts with the Pleiadians/Pleiarans today and in the New Age is the fact that my comprehensive consciousness form is able to conform to those of the extraterrestrials, whose consciousness and spirit are highly evolved, and I am the only person on Earth capable of doing that. This means that no other person on Earth has this capability, and for this reason alone it is absolutely impossible for other inhabitants of this planet to have any type of contact with the Pleiadians/Pleiarans. My spirit form, of course, has always remained the same over the many thousands and millions of years, but the comprehensive consciousness, which is capable of reincarnating, has changed in a way that is appropriate and normal as it passes through the inevitable evolutionary process. This implies that with each birth/reincarnation a new consciousness, hence a new personality, was born which no longer had anything in common with the previous personality, nor will it ever have any commonality. It is erroneous to assume, therefore, that a person with one particular personality can remain the identical person in a later life. The spirit form alone stays the same, while the personality of the consciousness transforms through evolution. This, in turn, doesn't imply, however, that a person could not, conceivably, have flashbacks of personalities in former lives. Question 8. You have by far the most extensive, best quality photo material and movie footage regarding extraterrestrial flying objects, landing tracks, and so forth, which are absolutely unique on Earth. How was it possible for you, a one-armed man, to take such photographs? Billy. Answer: I owe everything to the Pleiadians/Pleiarans, for they assisted me in every possible way in obtaining all of my material. They were the ones who directed me to the various locations, where they performed flight demonstrations for the photographs, but especially also simply for me, so I could record these events with my still camera and the movie camera to my heart's content. Occasionally the pilots of the beam ships even gave me precise directions. Hence, I was given the task of producing specific photos and movie material with the assistance of my extraterrestrial friends. Without their permission I could neither have taken the photos nor shot the movie footage, since I would not have been authorized to do so. Had I attempted to do so anyway, I am certain that the film would have been destroyed. Question 9. Why did the extraterrestrials mandate you to take photographs and movie footage of their beam ships and their flight maneuvers? Billy. Answer: their rationale was to designate me to produce the sharpest and best photo and movie film material the world has yet seen of the extraterrestrial flying objects, which we terrestrials usually call UFOs. The material I produced would serve to provoke a worldwide UFO controversy that would finally provide a wake-up call to the people on Earth in matters pertaining to extraterrestrial life. Simultaneously, the intent was also, as a logical consequence, to force governmental agencies and the military to reveal their secret findings and research in UFO matters to the public, and to make the information accessible to all. The intent of this process was also to uncover and illuminate the deceitful denials in certain countries regarding UFO crashes, along with denials of having secured crashed UFOs and their crews. The Pleiadians/Pleiarans were convinced that this controversy would transpire and their objectives would be fulfilled only when I disseminated the film and photo material throughout the globe, and would thereby automatically trigger an equally worldwide dispute between the proponents and opponents of my material statements and the contact dialogues. This actually did take place, and even my opponents were unable to prevent the ushering in of additional proponents of my story and the contacts. Indeed, their ranks swelled in numbers the harder some antagonists tried to brand me as a swindler and a fraud. Everything has happened as planned, just as the Pleiadians/Pleiarans predicted, namely, that more and more people are recognizing the truth of my statements the harder the opposition insults and defames me. Question 10. What other material do you have as evidence? Billy. Answer: from the Pleiadians/Pleiarans I received a sampling of diverse metal pieces from various production stages, and they were later analyzed in America. The analyzing metallurgist reached the conclusion that the metal fragments must have been produced by a cold fusion process, which even today remains impossible to duplicate here on Earth. Such a technological evolution may not even be feasible for another 150 years. Later on I was given some crystals, synthetic materials, and alloys made of copper, nickel, and silver, as well as pure silver which, by the way, originated in our sister universe, the Dal universe. I have additional evidence in the form of recorded whirring sounds from the beam ships that could not be duplicated with a dozen synthesizers in the highly up-to-date scientific company laboratory. Furthermore, I was permitted to photograph a laser pistol with which I shot a hole into the trunk of a dying apple tree which, by the way, miraculously began to suddenly bloom and bear fruit once again, something it had not done for years. We must take into account as evidence also the various witnesses who accompanied me frequently and who were allowed to enter the contact site vicinity. They also witnessed several beamship flight demonstrations, indeed they even filmed or photographed them themselves or observed them from a short distance away. Additionally, we should probably include the extraterrestrials' countless predictions about political, military and human events that would take place on Earth. With frightening accuracy and with great detail they also predicted natural catastrophes and the like, all of which were recorded in my writings and distributed worldwide. Question 11. In spite of everything, you continue to be accused of having photographed only small models instead of real spacecraft, etc. Some skeptics say you used double exposures and other photographic maneuvers. What do you have to say about such claims? Billy answer that they are beyond the ridiculous. There are plenty of witnesses who themselves have the opportunity to view and photograph the beam ships and even the extraterrestrials. They can verify that I never built or took along models of UFOs when together we drove, for instance, to the contact sites. And I could never have pulled off something like this secretly because my wife would never have stood for it. Therefore, I need no justification for myself and could only laugh about my deformous jealous stupidity. Any further comments are superfluous. Question 12. How do you defend yourself in view of the inflammatory defamation campaign against you by people such as the American Kale Korff, individual representatives of MAFON and others? Billy answer. I know about the truthfulness of my contacts and that's all I need in my defense, should I elect to take this stance. Since my contacts with the Pleiadians/Pleiarans are real and true, I find it unnecessary to defend or justify myself in any manner, shape or form. On the other hand, semi or full-fledged nutcases, such as certain MAFON members and the deformer Kale Korff, have never even exchanged one word with me personally or communicated in writing with me personally. On the other hand, they are merely poor, insanely jealous know-it-alls who enjoy being in the public limelight. They do not upset me. On the contrary, I am in a way even grateful to them in spite of their lies and defamations because their negative activities have motivated many people into contacting us here at the center to find out more about the real truth, and as a result they are beginning to stand up for the truth of my contacts with the extraterrestrials. As a rule, the curious tend also to request information about the ones who are harassing and slandering me as a fraud, or those who are cheating me. For this reason I am recording the underhanded schemes of all those ill-intentioned people and I am producing and mailing out flyers to clarify and correct various disputed matters, so all interested parties can be informed about what's really going on. However, I do not consider what I am doing as a justification or defense, I am merely providing relevant and important information. Question 13. On Earth countless people are lying about their contacts with the extraterrestrials, among them other so-called mediums and channelers. Could you tell me your opinion, respectively that of the Pleiadians/Pleiarans, on this pesky matter? Billy answer. Any claims related to alleged contacts with the Pleiadians/Pleiarans by anyone else other than me are pure lies and fraud because, in fact, no other person on Earth except me, is capable of maintaining contacts with them, and these include contacts of a physical, telepathic or perceptual nature. Anyone claiming otherwise is ensnared in a lie, a hoax or fraud, and the Pleiadians/Pleiadians have vehemently and repeatedly reconfirmed this fact over the course of my many contact years with them. However, at one time 5 individuals did have genuine impulse contacts with the Pleiadians/Pleiadians. But these 5 persons in the meantime have passed away. Furthermore, to other extraterrestrials there likewise exist no personal contacts by terrestrial human beings. Therefore, such claims are nothing more than a lie, hoax or a fraud, regardless of what names or titles these ladies and gentlemen who claim they have had contacts with extraterrestrials, spirit or light entities and so forth bestow upon themselves. This includes mediums and channelers who usually are nothing but very deliberate, conscious liars, hoaxers and frauds, or they are delusional, schizophrenic or psychotic people and the like. Not to be disregarded though are certain examination contacts in which some extraterrestrials abduct terrestrials to be studied, analyzed, examine them, in other words. But their undertakings have nothing to do with the nonsense implying that extraterrestrials are impregnating terrestrial women or are having sex with them and the like. This form of tomfoolery is particularly prevalent in America and borders on mass hysteria. Often claimed in the same breath is the ridiculous statement that extraterrestrials are massacring farm animals, etc. Extraterrestrial flying objects and even their landings are frequently observed, even filmed or photographed by terrestrials. But one must clearly keep in mind that such events do not constitute a contact. Genuine contacts only occur where oral or telepathic communication takes place between extraterrestrials and a terrestrial human on Earth, and with the exception of me, no one on Earth is capable of doing so. Take into consideration that the multitude of male and female liars, hoaxers and frauds, who claim to be having telepathic contacts with Pleiadian entities, would require a waiting period of 1,30 years for a response even if they were able to send a telepathic message to the Pleiades in the first place. To be precise, the distance to the Pleiades visible from Earth is nearly 420 light-years one way and would require 840 light-years for the response to arrive back on Earth. And since everyone knows that telepathic thoughts only travel at the normal speed of light, they would require approximately 420 light-years one way from Earth to the visible Pleiades. Let's assume for one moment that some life form did exist on these Pleiades we know about, which are absolutely uninhabitable and uninhabited by either spirit or light entities or any other type of life form, then to receive an answer back would again require approximately 420 years. Who on Earth lives a total of 840 years anyway? This shows that all of these alleged contactees, mediums, and channelers are lying, are deceiving and defrauding the public, when they claim they are having contacts or the like with beings from distant stars or their planets. And not one of these liars has the capability to bridge these immense distances with telepathic thoughts. And as for me, I will not reveal at this time the secret behind how I can do so because I am certain that once I divulge what it is, every lying, deceiving and fraudulent cheating character would suddenly claim he or she has the same ability. Question 14. How did you wind up with the nickname, Billy? Billy. Answer. When I was in Tehran, Iran, former Persia, I made the acquaintance of a young woman from Los Angeles in the United States. Her name was Judy Reed. Because I was dressed in Western garb, which I found was very practical, she compared me to James Butler Hickok, also known as Wild Bill Hickok, and from then on she called me Billy. The name stuck wherever I went. And that is how I have retained it to this day. Question 15. When and where did you have your first meditation? Billy. Answer. In the mid-1940s near Bulak, my native village, in Sfath's spaceship and under his direction. Question 16. You are a cautious man when it comes to making new acquaintances. Why do you lead such a reclusive lifestyle in view of the nature of your important mission, which must be brought forth to the world? Billy answer: although the contrary is often claimed, my lifestyle stems by no means from the fear of the various assassination attempts which, so far, have been made on me, a total of 13 times 16 as of June 10, .. 98. The reasons why I maintain a low profile vary. First, I am no guru or sect leader, and for this reason I need not present myself publicly to gather followers or to represent myself as some saint, which I certainly am not, by any stretch of the imagination. Second, I do not want others to put me on a pedestal, for I am neither something special nor someone who enjoys being admired or gawked at. I am not on display like an animal in a zoo. Furthermore, I am not inclined to have journalists interview me because, as a rule, they want only to sensationalize the material, whereby they twist and falsify the truth to the limits and turn it merely into tabloid journalism that is far from the truth, or else they tend to degrade everything I tell them with their lies and twisting of the facts. You don't need a guru nor a sect to disseminate the teachings of the truth. Nor do you need a saint or someone who wants to be a big hero before the public. Without interruption, and will do so until I expire and pass from this life. However, the current contacts won't occur quite as frequently as they did before February 3, 1995, although it is possible for a contact dialogue to still be recorded and the information to be passed on now and then. Question 2. Could you possibly provide me with a broad outline of how many human races inhabit the universe? Billy answer: originally 40,353,607 different pure human races were created by creation, and they began in a natural evolutionary manner upon many planets within many solar systems of many galaxies throughout the entire universe. These human races developed from natural biologic evolutionary processes within the developmental interview with Billy from 1998. Question 1. When and under what circumstances did your contacts with the extraterrestrials begin? How long are they supposed to last? Billy answer: my contacts with extraterrestrial human entities began in the 1940s when I was still a very young boy. My first contact person was an old man named Svarth, who spoke in the somewhat broad Swiss German Polack dialect of my village. It all began on a beautiful, sunny summer morning when I was standing with my father next to a large walnut tree behind our house. Suddenly an inner urge beckoned me to turn my eyes toward Mount Eschenmoser. As a result, above it in the azure sky, I saw a silvery flash shooting in the direction of the church steeple. After a split second the silver flash shot past us, by a young woman from Hera in the Pleiades/Pleiades system, which is not identical to the Pleiades constellation with which we are familiar. The new contact person was Semyaza, and the contacts with her continued into the early 1980s. Additionally, I was also visited by Semyaza's sister, Plea, along with their father, Pathar, and Commander Quetzal. Since that time 2 young women, Talida and Manara, among others, also became my contact partners. Official contacts with me ended in the early morning hours of February 3, 1995. But this didn't mean that the contacts completely ended, only the official contacts terminated because the Pleiadians/Pleiarans had by this time fulfilled their task on Earth. Private and unofficial interpersonal contacts continue without. Shortly after my arrival, a silver, pear-shaped flying object descended and landed on the ground before me. A very old man disembarked and addressed me in a friendly tone. He said his name was Svarth and explained he came from an alien planet and had many things to discuss with me, to teach me, and so forth. This was my initial contact with an extraterrestrial human being, and it was followed by many others with Svarth. The contacts ended in 1953, only to be continued until 1964 by a woman called Askit. When Svarth visited me, he came from the Pleiades/Pleiades. Askit came from the Dal universe, a parallel universe to ours, a twin universe. No further contacts took place until they were resumed on January 28, 1975, above our heads and disappeared above the forest, approximately 5 kilometers 3 miles from us. I could see that the object was a huge, round, metallic disc. When I asked my father what he thought this thing was, he replied that it was probably Hitler's latest secret weapon. Somehow I couldn't believe him, and from this moment onward I constantly scoured the sky, where I observed at night, moving stars, traveling high in the firmament. They were not airplanes. One day I felt an inner impulse and I heard some sort of voice which, from that point onward, began to speak to me. One day the voice summoned me to walk to Langenzingen in the Horrigen forest and told me to wait there for things to happen, namely, a pear-shaped flying object would be visiting me. I did as I was told and went to the designated location.